All right, everybody, welcome to another edition of the Leadership Blend with your amazing host, Ricardo D. Rice. And this week we have a particular show that is near and dear to me. So most of you guys are running nonprofits, you're running churches, you're running socioeconomic organizations. This week we're going to actually take for-profit ideologies and actually apply them to your nonprofit organizations to make them better. So this is going to be a lot of stuff you're probably not accustomed to hearing, but I can assure you it's going to make your organizations great, and it's going to make your retention a lot higher, meaning you're going to be keeping the people that are coming to your churches, you're going to be keeping your volunteers. Promise you, you're going to thank me later. So without further ado, I'm going to let him introduce himself, today's guest. So take it away.
Hello. Thank you for having me here. Dr. Shelton Goode, CEO, President of Icarus Consulting. We are a veteran-owned, veteran-operated firm that specializes in helping companies get diverse talent, keep them, and also create an inclusive workplace for them. Now, not only do we help them get them in, but we also help them keep the people that's already there, helping making the organization successful by making sure that everybody at the organization feels valued, respected, that they feel that they are part of the organization, that the organization is a place where they belong.
All right, so you're a Forbes man. I didn't get into that on the radio, but I feel like I should start with that because I want y'all to know this is no Johnny come lately. This man is a award-winning director of inclusion and diversity. So this is what you do.
This is what I do. I did it before forming Icarus Consulting. I was a diversity and HR executive for a number of large companies. And now I'm doing the same thing on the outside, helping mostly medium to fairly large companies, a couple global, do this. But we do a lot of things we're going to talk about today will apply also to nonprofits and people that are leading volunteers and people that are just trying to have the best organization they can.
Okay, so let's start from the beginning. What does diversity mean for an organization?
I will tell you, if you ask 20 people in the room what diversity is, you're going to get 30 different answers. If you ask a for-profit company, they're going to tell you, I want to get the best talent so I can make the most money. If you ask a marketing firm, they're going to tell you, we just want to get new customers or maybe hold on to the ones that we have. If you ask a nonprofit, depending on what their mission is, they're going to say, well, we want to make sure that we are equitable, that we are trying to have equality or some social justice activism. It just depends on the organization. So diversity does mean different things for different organizations. But for me, personally, differences, similarities. You've got people in an organization, any type of organization, but this is particularly true of nonprofits. You've got people in there that are different backgrounds, like to approach what they do differently. But they also have a lot of things in common, usually around the mission of the nonprofit. They care about it. So what do you have to do? You have to create an inclusive environment so that everybody feels that they belong so they can do their best work. That's what it means to me.
Which is going to be my next question. What does inclusion mean to you? And do the two go hand in hand?
They do. You want to have people in an organization that think differently, that approach work differently, but at the same time, you want them to be able to do their best work. The only way you do that, everyone in the organization has to feel like they belong on the team. I like to use a lot of sports metaphors. Sorry about that, but...
Which I told him they really work for him. I hate sports, but I let him get away with that when we were on radio. But it's fine. Most people will catch it, so you can use it. Most people will catch it.
So with the passing of Kobe, that's kind of one of the things on my mind. But you take any team, any sports team, everyone is on the team. They're getting paid. They have the same uniform. They're playing different positions. But what do they want? They want to get on the field. They want to get on the court so that they can perform and contribute to the success of the team. That applies to any organization, and it starts and ends with how you are treated by the person that you work for every day.
So this boils down to leadership, the way they set the stage, the way they set the atmosphere.
Absolutely. Leadership sets the tone. They just don't write the checks, but if they make you feel like I care about you. If I'm your leader, you're gonna perform better.
Okay, because of America's history, where we've been, segregation, integration, all that stuff, how important was diversity back then?
Yeah.
In your opinion, because you've done corporate America for years.
Yes.
So the changes, what have you seen?
Yeah, so thank you for that. Because I actually got into this work, I was actually in human resources. I was a HR team leader. I got pulled into this work because of an organization that I was at the time had a lawsuit. And so because they had some employees that didn't feel as though they were being treated fair. They didn't feel as though they were being passed over for promotion. They didn't feel as though they were being paid fair. So it was these individuals got together and filed a lawsuit. At that time that lawsuit was filed, there were a lot of lawsuits going around. This was the way people were trying to force civil rights to be a reality through the court system. So it was very important, and we didn't call it diversity then, but quickly as we emerged out of affirmative action.
I was getting ready to say this sounds like pre-affirmative action.
Yeah, exactly. Affirmative action, equal opportunity. Somewhere along the way, this concept of the fact that you have a diverse workforce and that you, in order for companies to continue to be successful, you had to, at the very minimum, address some of the things required by law. But then you had to go above and beyond that. So it was very important back in those days. A lot of companies found themselves on the wrong end of lawsuits. So they either lost the lawsuit or they had to settle.
So because I didn't get this there. So while we're here, affirmative action, do you think it was a good placeholder for diversity, or do you think it had its setbacks? Because some people were saying, because the term minority has changed. So it's no longer just African Americans. Mm-hmm. Now when you say minority, you're covering everybody that's not the majority.
That's correct.
So affirmative action, do you think it was a good placeholder to segue us here, or was it, what's your outlook on affirmative action?
Yeah. Again, super question. Affirmative action had its right place in its right time. You had obviously the Supreme Court decision with Brown versus Board that ushered in the Civil Rights Act of '64, which was never enforced. And so then affirmative action became one of those public policies to actually make all the things that were supposed to be in law actually happen. That, we say, causes a placeholder because there was this big promise about, things were going to change as a result. When they didn't, people says, we're going back to court. But this time, we're not going to just ask the court to rule for fairness. We want compensation. And so that's where you had very large awards or settlements. That got the attention of other companies that says, we don't want the bad publicity and we don't want to be on the losing end. And then we need a diversity consultant. We need a diversity officer. And then you had all of that activity in the late 90s, the early 2000s. And so it was I can't say it's the right thing. It had its place in time and it helped the evolution move forward.
All right. So as somebody who's been in HR for a minute, because you said you started there.
Right.
So where did you start in HR? Because there's so many different branches. And this is a segue for all those individuals, because I have so many friends who are trying to get into human resources.
Right.
And it's one of those things that people get in and kind of stay in.
Right.
So what would your advice be for those individuals?
To start at a place that makes sense, either in recruiting or training. Start there and then gradually become a generalist. Or what they call today is a consultant, and that's the person that an organizational leader is counting on to help me make my organization better. And then you move into leadership as an HR manager, HR supervisor, HR leader, and then progress from there. Now, the more time you spend in the field, you may say, "Oh, I feel more drawn to compensation. I feel more drawn."
I was going to ask that because it was
like there are other areas, but it's only after you gotten a good taste of what HR is that I believe the most successful and the happiest HR folks are the folks that started out as generalists, found a sweet spot, something that they really felt comfortable and competent doing, and then went down that route. And so that's what I would advise.
Okay, good deal. Okay, so we've been over the history. We've been over kind of where we are now. Actually, we probably should get more into where we are now. So where do we stand now with diversity and inclusion? Because now you're seeing diversity officers, and you're seeing it's a C something, Chief Diversity Officer.
Right.
Yeah, so you're seeing these positions. So where do we stand now as it pertains to diversity and inclusion?
So where do we stand now? I think there's a struggle going on, and you've got some organizations that in 2020 are just beginning and are having to answer tough questions like, why aren't we just starting in 2020? And if we've gotten to this point without it, do we really need to start? You've got companies that's been doing it a while and people are saying, are we there yet? Haven't we done enough? And then you've got some companies that's like, hey, we've done this stuff, but did we like it the way it was? Wasn't it better before we started doing it? So you got companies all over the place. And so, I'm busier than usual, helping companies level set. For the companies that's just setting, I'm asking them, tell me what it is you want to do, why, and, are you prepared to do it? For companies that have been successful and says, are we there yet? And it's like, well, where is there? Where are you trying to go? And for those companies that want to go back, we says, and it's a kind of, let's talk about how things used to be and why would you want to go back? And so, I have a lot of conversations. In fact, that's what I start out with. Let's just have a conversation, and then let's see where we go from there. So that's what we are. We're all over the place. We're all over the place.
So how do you make sense out of nonsense? So how do you do it? Like when you work with clients and stuff, how do you make sense out of nonsense?
I simply I simply go into the client and say, tell me what's going on. And this is a top of the house conversation. So it's treated attorney-client privilege. Let's just talk. And then if I can get them to be transparent about what's going on, then we can have a candid and profitable conversation about what they should do to either get better or to address some of the issues they're facing. And that conversation has to be at the top of the house, and it has to be treated confidentially, because some of the things that need to change in some organizations, that's a tough decision. They have to make a decision whether or not we want to do what we have to do in order to change. So that's how you make sense out of nonsense. I never ever try to have a one size fits all cookie cutter approach. Every organization is different, especially when you're talking about nonprofits.
Which is where we're going to segue to. So how does this, for all the people that are watching that are church leaders, nonprofit leaders who don't have big budgets, who don't have money and are accustomed to having volunteers,
yes.
How does this all translate down to them?
Oh my goodness. It means what the stuff that I'm talking about means even more to them. This is their true currency. In a big corporation where you have total rewards such as comp, benefits, flex time, and you can sort of modify or pacify people if you're not treating them right temporarily. When you're talking about leading volunteers, start with the strength. They're volunteering and they're affiliating with your organization because of the mission, because what it is you're about. Start there, and then all the stuff that we're talking about, treating people and making sure they feel like they're respected, making sure that they're valued because of their expertise, making sure that they feel that they belong. That's your true currency, because you can't fall back on the total rewards that a for-profit could do. And by goodness, we're talking cost-effective, high-impact, budget-friendly things, in some cases budget-neutral things that you can do. I was talking earlier about common sense. Maybe
which is not so common.
I believe that civility and common sense, something that we've gotten away from. I think if we go back and apply some of those things, you will be surprised of the results that you'll get when you do that. Just treating people with respect. And I know that sounds too simple, but pick up the newspaper, listen to the radio, turn on the television, and you will hear episode after episode of instances where people are just not treating people the way that they would want to be treated, with respect.
So let's give an example. So let's say there's a pastor who has a semi to medium-sized congregation,
right?
And his desire is to have a global ministry. And now let's say it's an African-American church, and now he has other ethnicities attending his church.
Right.
What are some things he can do to be inclusionary or diverse?
I would say start right at the beginning by making sure, if you're going to do that, let's make sure that all of your leadership is on board about why you want to do it, why it's important, what do you hope to accomplish, and then listen to them about how to go about making that transition from an African American centric congregation to one that's more diverse. And I know a little bit about that, been a part of a couple of churches that have done, mega churches that have done that successfully.
Okay, so we were talking about churches and then what it looks like in a diverse and inclusive church. So we're in our last segment. So this is kind of where we start the wrap up. So my question to you is, moving forward, what should diversity and inclusion look like for organizations moving forward? What's a good starting point? What are some good practices that they could put in place, some good policies they could put in place for-profit and for non-for-profits?
So I would say, let's make it really, really simple. Let's break it down to something everybody can understand. The good place to go is to get away from all the jargon, get away from words. Remember, we started out I think segment 1 talking about what is diversity, what is inclusion. Let's get away from all that. Let's make it real simple. Let's talk about problem solving. If you are in an organization where you have problems and you want to approach it in an inclusive way versus a non-inclusive way, then bring the people most affected by the problem into the discussion about solutions. I mean, it sounds super simple, right?
True.
But that's not what happens.
Yeah.
That's not what happens. So remember, everything I'm talking about is intentional. It's just it's like, wait a minute, we just want to come up with solutions, but let's talk to the people most affected by the problem, and let's hear what some solutions that make sense and can be done, and we'll get to the root of the problem. Let's do that.
Give an example for those that can't grapple it. Give an example.
So let me give you a very, very, very simple one. Okay? Now, this may sound a little bit corporate, but I think it gets my point across. Let's say that I'll give you I know a nonprofit that has a call center.
Really?
Yes, I have that's one of the things. I know a nonprofit. They specialize in making sure that disabled and veterans can be fully employed.
Oh.
And they have a call center. So if you want to, let's say that if you had the equipment and technology and one of your issues is turnover at a call center, well, what's one of the ways that you could address turnover? How many people, if you could let them work from home, answering phones, serving the clients, and if you could monitor their performance, I bet you if you could let your very best people work from home, I bet you would retain them. Not only, I bet you everybody else would be like, how can I get a chance to work from home? And it's like, oh, let's make sure that your quality scores are high. Mm-hmm. Let's make sure that you're showing up, that you're not calling out on every Monday and every Friday, or every Monday
for young and the restless
after a holiday. And then you too can qualify to be an at-home rep. This nonprofit cut their turnover in half by creating that program. That's what I'm talking about. Now, where did they get that idea from? They got the idea from the reps. We heard that another company, maybe is doing this. They pay a little less, which is why I didn't go work for them. But if y'all could even think about doing something like that, and the company says, let's start small. Let's try it. Let's try it with 5-6 reps, and let's see how it works. Then they expanded it. Now they've got almost 50% of their reps working from home. And their retention rate for that group is like 80%.
Nice.
Yes. And so apply it to decision making. You got a decision to be made. Who's going to be impacted? Bring them in. You got some conflict? Rather than me and you talking about everybody else, let's bring the people in that have the issue and then do that. Communications, we got a communications problem? If things are not, it's like, wait a minute, I didn't get that message. How did you get it? It's like, wait a minute, why didn't you know about what we're trying to do? And how can we communicate so that everybody gets the message, whatever. Bring the people that's affected by the business in to the problem solving, the decision making, solving conflicts, and communication. You say, well, Dr. Good, that sounds too simple. Yeah, it is. And guess what? It's budget friendly, if not budget neutral. But we work in organizations even today, nonprofits, decisions, problems, conflicts, all handled at the top, by the top, solely by the top.
This is true. This is very, very true.
Your nonprofit, trust me, if they do that. And again, we can help them. A couple quick 30-minute conversations, give them some ideas. IcarusConsult.net, Shelton Goode at IcarusConsult.net.
Which I was going to give you space to do that, but since you already did it. So how do people get in touch with you, Dr. Goode?
Well, hey, again, especially since we're talking about nonprofits.
Oh, yeah.
I have a special place in my heart for nonprofits. So again, IcarusConsult.net, Shelton.Goode at IcarusConsult.net. Social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, I'm all over the place. Reach out. Let's have a conversation.
Final thoughts.
That don't try to do everything overnight. If there's some things you want to improve in your organization, figure out what the top 2 or 3 things you're willing to commit to do and that you are willing to monitor and continuously work on. If you do that, not try to do everything overnight, focus on the top 2 or 3 things, I promise you'll see the progress that you want in the time that you want, and especially for your nonprofits, in a way that's not going to hurt your budgets.
All right, everybody. There you go, Dr. Shelton Goode. Thank you for coming in today, sir.
Thank you for having me.
And you guys will be able to see this episode on Sunday at 9 a.m. And I will see you guys next week, same time, same place, on the Leadership Blend television show.